Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Afterword. I'm Dave. Here with Steve.
Yep.
Glad you're here with us.
Yeah,
Thank you. We're recording not just video, but also audio. Not just audio, but also video. So this is going to be on YouTube. So we've got a couple dozen hits for the first video. People commented that your head is a testament to cranial architecture. They were wowed by it and the way the light bounces off of it. That's what people said.
Well, I'm lucky, actually.
How?
There are some bald heads that should not be uncovered.
Who are your favorite bald people of all time in terms of the way that they look? Do you have a list of your?
I do not.
Can I tell you my list?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Okay.
I think Bruce Willis has an incredible bald head.
Okay.
I think Michael Jordan has an incredible bald head.
Okay.
And then we got to go old school for this. This is going all the way back.
Yul Brynner.
Telly Savalas.
Oh.
Do you remember Telly Savalas?
I do kind of, but
anyway, you don't have a list of your favorite bald dudes?
No.
It's not a thing. When did you start? Was there a moment where you're like, I'm going to shave my head?
Yeah, I guess it was a moment, but I mean, it wasn't like a big deal. It was just that you couldn't part stuff anymore, and it was just there's two little stragglers all sticking up everywhere. Anyway, what are we doing talking about?
I don't know. I just think it's cool. Okay, because we're talking about a man.
I've been doing this for a long time, so it's really funny when people come up to me that haven't seen me in a bit, like as they come back from COVID or some of the things that go on. They'll say, "Wow, Steve, you look exactly the same." And I'm like, that's because I've looked old for 15 years, right? I've looked exactly like this for 15 years. So.
Okay, so here's where the tie-in is. We started this message with about a head, and we're going to end it with a head on a platter. So, John,
gosh, what a transition.
That's kind of dark. In this chapter, we have two heavy things, but also two amazing things that really happen. And the first thing is that John the Baptist is killed.
Yeah.
And he's killed by Herod Antipas, who is the son of Herod the Great, who was also a murderous jerk.
Yep.
He tried to kill. Remember, he's the guy in the early story that tried to kill a whole bunch of baby. He did kill a whole bunch of baby boys.
Yeah.
Trying to kill them.
And it's interesting, not all of Herod's sons are the murderous kind, because when Jesus gets away, he actually goes to an area where one of the other sons is over the area, and it's a little bit safer for him.
Yes, there's three sons. I mean, this is all political intrigue and dialogue, but Herod has three kids, and Archelaus, Antipas, who actually, his name is Antipas, but he actually calls himself Herod Antipas because he wants to be like his dad, and then Philip. And Herod the Great's kingdom is divided up into three different regions.
Yep.
And the region of Galilee is under Herod Antipas. And then what's interesting is the reason why there's so much controversy is because the Herod Antipas and Philip, they're called to Rome to meet with Caesar because they're under Caesar. They're ruling this area for Caesar.
Yeah.
They're underneath his control. And while they're out there, Herod Antipas falls madly in love with Philip's wife, whose name is, what do we have her name?
Herodias?
Herodias, that's right, Herodias.
So everybody's a Herod.
Yeah, it's a little weird.
It is weird.
Herod divorces his wife, Philip divorces his wife, and he marries his brother's wife, and then he sends away his old wife, who was actually, it was a political allegiance. She's actually the princess of Nabatea, which is the region just south of Israel. It butts up against it. It's south of the Dead Sea. You know, the Jordan River's up here, or Jordan River's here, and it connects the Sea of Galilee down to the Dead Sea. The area to the south and to the east of that area is called Nabatea. It's most famous for a city carved out of rock called Petra. Do you know?
Sure, absolutely.
It was in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Where the Grail was housed. That was. I've had Indiana Jones on my mind. So that's where. And so what happens is, because Herod divorces the princess of Nabatea, a whole-scale war breaks out because the king, her dad, is really not happy with this. And so
rightfully so.
So there's war, there's intrigue, there's also there's
and in the midst
scandal.
of that, there's this very strange prophet who shows up and says, "This is all wrong. This is all wrong. You're supposed to be leading God's people, and you are doing everything here in terms of your families completely wrong."
Yeah,
and of course, he's in jail, and it doesn't go well for him.
No. They plot, they kill him. Well, it looks, from the story, it looks like Herodias kind of plots to get John the Baptist killed. She doesn't like what he said.
Oh yeah, she's the real villain in this thing.
Well, but he's a patsy, and he's spineless.
Yeah, he's spineless. She is hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. She has been scorned, and she will get even.
So let me ask you a question. When you read this story of Herod killing John the Baptist, do you make any connections to Pilate? A spineless political leader who doesn't stand up to people. There's a cable that's hell-bent on manipulating the system to get this guy killed. He doesn't stand up. Do you read those parallels between...
I think it's a bit of the nature of the people that Caesar would pick, right? Are people who are not going to be the strong political leaders that will get ambitious and try to break off. I mean, the kinds of people he wants are people who can be bought and will keep the peace and will basically be, a tool in Caesar's hands. So maybe it's a more of a... I've never really thought about it as from the way you just brought it in, but maybe it's more of a reality of the kinds of people that Herod would pick.
Or the kind of people that Caesar picks, yeah.
Yeah, and remember, these are not only, the tools of Caesar, they're also in the worst posts, right? Palestine is not a good spot. I mean, you want to be up in...
Because it's too far away from Rome.
Right.
Yeah. Several... And there's no jets back then, I don't understand.
No jets. It tends to be super hot there and dry and dusty and rocky. And these are not good posts if you're looking to try to advance your career.
Climb up. Two other thoughts on this before we move on to the beautiful parts of this passage. One is, when you think about this story, what you see is that the kingdom of God and the kingdom of men clash, and the kingdom of man enacts violence and kills John the Baptist. And so you have to think they killed John. Like, that's one of the lessons from this. They killed John, and of course that foreshadows another. Jesus has to be thinking, if they killed John, they're going to kill me. So is there some sort of lesson there that the world's systems are at violent conflict with the way of God?
Well, I mean, Jesus just gave a really clear teaching on this with the parable of the weeds, that there are two kingdoms that are at war.
Yeah.
And they are one is seeking to destroy the other.
Yeah.
And so you've got this kingdom of God and the kingdom of Satan, or the evil kingdom. And then you have this real life illustration of just how this clash can come to bear, where one of the greats of the New Testament, one of the great heralds of all of the prophets, dies a senseless, cruel, horrible death based on a stupid promise because of a young teenager dancing.
Yeah.
It's just filled with all kinds of junk, right? Yeah. And it's all bad. And imagine the heart of Jesus when he gets the news that John the Baptist is one of the couple of people on the planet that get him. And he's a family member. They've probably hung out, did vacations together for years and years when they were growing up.
Well, it looks like they all fled to Egypt, so they would have grown up there together. Yeah. It's highly likely that there would a real good chance.
And then, other than Mary, nobody gets it as well as John. And even John struggles.
Understanding Jesus' mission and who he is, his identity.
And even John struggles in that. Because of the difficulty of the way that John's life is lived out.
Yeah.
Very difficult to be a prophet.
Well, and not just that, he's in jail and it looks like he's going to die. And he's like, hey, listen, you're going to get me out, right? Like like the kingdom of God's going to win. Yeah, I don't lose here. That's in 11.
Right. Yeah. In 11, we were there. And then he's still in prison.
Yeah.
By the time we get to 14.
Well, in 14, Matthew tells us he's been killed. And then he gives us the backstory.
Yeah.
But it just reminds me that, like, I was just thinking, and I'm not trying to delve into this because I'm certainly not an expert on geopolitical events, but there was it looks like an attempted coup in Russia that was thwarted, political alliances, violence, tanks, mercenaries, armies. It's not new, right? Political power breeds murderous intent because power People want it. It comes with all sorts of... Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
There's a sense in which power and dynamics, and anyone who speaks against that power or condemns that power...
puts themselves at risk.
Absolutely.
Clearly. And we're in this is not very far from...
Yeah.
Are we in a culture where there's sexual things being pushed on us in our culture, and we're called to hold a standard that God has given us? I mean, that's pretty much what is happening here.
I hadn't made that connection, but
we've got
that's
that
an interesting
same
point.
kinds of things going on for us now.
Yeah.
And there will be opposition very strong.
Well,
but let me say this.
But you've talked about that. You've said over and over again that the Christian sexual ethos, is the most unpopular in today's culture because it grates against the individual expression.
Yeah, there's only one expression of our sexuality that God endorses, and that's in a monogamous relationship between a man and a woman.
A covenantal.
Monogamous relationship. And
and that speaks against all sorts of...
and that's not a very popular thing to say right now. But here's the deal. Ain't nobody threatening to chop off my head.
No, that's
now
true.
they're going to scream my head off as they scream at me. That might be true, and that's not pleasant, but it's not John the Baptist kind of thing.
Okay, so then you would expect Jesus to do what he does, which is to grieve, to mourn. He tries to get away, and then there's this incredible verse, and I wanted to share this. I know that you didn't get it. We don't really even have time to get into it. It's in Matthew 14. When Jesus heard what had happened, this is verse 13. He withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place, right? Mm-hmm. So he's grieving. Mm-hmm. He's in the midst of this. Hearing of this, the crowds followed him on foot from the towns. And crowds, we know that, what's it say later, 5,000, and that's just the men. So this is huge, 10, 15,
huge
20,000?
I'd say 20.
Yeah, so it's a lot of people. It's a massive people. And then this verse it's so beautiful. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them. And the word for compassion is splanchnisomai. Splanchnisomai. It means to be affected deep in one's inner being. The word actually means to be moved. That's from the Greek. Deep in the bowels. With sympathy and then compassion. So moving from sympathy to compassion. So it's enacted mercy. And what's interesting is this splanchnisomai, which is this Greek word. I'm probably saying it wrong.
It's hard to say.
It's only used of Jesus in the Gospels. And there's two other moments where Jesus breaks out splanchnisomai. And they're two really famous stories. Here, let me read it to you. But the Samaritan, as he traveled, came to where the man was, and when he saw him, he splanchnisomai'd him. And the other,
compassion.
Right. So that the Good Samaritan, very important. And then in Luke 15, but while he was still a long way off, the father saw him and was splanchnisomai'd for him, and he ran to his son and threw his arms around him and kissed him. Isn't that so cool?
Yeah.
The splanchnisomai really is one of the central hearts of God.
Yeah, so what you have is you've got a guy in legitimate, serious grief.
Yeah.
You've also got a collective. His disciples just returned from being sent out. The context of the other accounts in the Gospels let us know that also just happened. So all the guys come back and they say, Jesus, you can't believe what we just did. I mean, we healed the sick. We drove out the demons. And he's like, okay, and then juxtapositioned against this joyful report.
He says, I saw Satan fall like...
Yeah, it's this huge grief.
Yeah.
The huge grief of a family member died.
One of ours just got killed.
Yeah. And so you've got that, and then the appropriate response is to withdraw. I mean, that's absolutely appropriate. And this is one, I don't know if you saw this, but there's actually 4 withdrawals.
I didn't see
throughout the gospel.
No.
As Jesus is doing ministry. It's a regular habit of his to pull away and to try to collect. And each time it gets all shipwrecked, right?
Because of the needs of the people?
Yes, because he's just so popular with all of the people. And so
I remember there at one moment where Peter's like, we've been looking for you everywhere. Where have you been?
And he said, I ain't telling you, that's my best hiding place. So, there's a constant need for Christ to be able to get away, and especially with these guys, and debrief the death of John and the victories and the experience that they had out in the ministry. And of course, then I think what happens is that these crowds collect And after the collective teaching of a couple of 3 days, probably, in my mind, it doesn't tell us for sure. It could have only been 1 day, but just the need for food and how you can visibly see that they need. I'm thinking it's maybe been a few days that they've been sitting under the teaching of Christ. He's been healing their sick, teaching them about the kingdom. And then we have this beautiful story where he blows his disciples' minds.
Right.
Just blows them.
So one of the things that I thought was interesting also about the feeding of the 5,000, which is really more like 10, 15, 20,000, is whose idea it was to feed the people. And I think it's really interesting that Jesus has been serving and giving for so long. His disciples are starting to think about other people. And so they come to him and say, hey, the people don't have food. We need to send them away. So there's a heart that you start to see glimmer through. Maybe it's they were just sent out. Maybe Jesus is rubbing off on them. Something is happening.
Maybe they're hungry.
Oh, sure. Right. Well, you just turned it pretty cynical. I thought it was beautiful, but maybe it's that. Maybe they're hungry and they're thinking, yeah, maybe it's a combo of both.
Yeah.
But then I love that. And then whose idea was it? They're like, well, you give them something to eat, right? And then who feeds them? In some ways, the answer is Jesus feeds them. He's the one who creates the bountiful food. But in other ways, the answer is they feed them because they're the ones who take the baskets out. So, and I love that because it reminds me of like the doctrine of the inspiration of Scripture. It's fully God and fully man, or the incarnation. Jesus is fully God and fully man. The work of the kingdom of God is fully God. Like whose idea is this? Jesus is the one who has compassion. Who fed the people? Well, Jesus did. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but
whose idea was it? The disciples. Yeah. Who passed out the food? The disciples. It's fully God and fully man. So there's a beautiful merging, and they're empowered to go out with God, with Jesus, with the Spirit, and do neat stuff, you know?
Yeah, and that's what I brought up at the Toga campus, is that one of the great lessons of this is that God can easily feed this crowd. He's already got history of feeding a crowd that's 100 times bigger.
Yeah. Well,
with manna.
Yeah, we have this is Matthew kind of hearkening back to the Moses story of the feeding of Israel in the desert.
God doesn't need, and Jesus doesn't need the disciples to do this, but it seems to be the way of the kingdom that God's Spirit motivates God's children who then engage with the world, God's world.
That's really good.
Yeah.
And so they do, and they feed. Okay, so the one thing we didn't get to talk about is the end of this, is the
yeah, and it's too bad because it's a phenomenal story,
and that's the walking on water.
Yeah.
So I think here's how it happens, just because we didn't get into it. It's right after they eat, immediately Jesus made the disciples get in a boat and go on ahead of him to the other side. This is the Sea of Galilee, and he dismissed the crowd. After he dismissed him, he goes up on a mountaintop. He prays by himself. Because again, he if he was tired before, he's spent, right?
Yep, he's spent.
Later that night, he was there alone, and the boat was a considerable distance from the land.
Yeah, we know from other translations it's 3 or 4 miles out. It's dead in the middle.
Yeah, right. It's far out. It's buffeted by waves. The wind was against it, and shortly before dawn, Jesus goes out to them walking on the lake. They're terrified. It's a ghost, they say. And Jesus says, no, don't be afraid. Take courage. It's I. Don't be afraid. And then Peter says, Lord, if it's you, tell me to come to you on the water. And he says, come. And then Peter gets out and walks on the boat. Before we go any further into the story, what do you see this tying into the feeding of the 5,000? Is this a story about the discipleships growing in their sense that they can do things that Jesus did or participate with Jesus? How do you think of this moment? What lessons, how does this tie into the other parts of the Gospels that we just read? And what do you think about this?
Well, I think it's another demonstration of Jesus' power over nature. Remember now, the water is the great strength. It's the great mystery. It's the great fear of this time.
Yeah.
It's the great limiter How far do you travel? Well, till you get to the edge of water, and then you stop.
Yeah.
And so,
and in the ancient world, and I'm pretty sure when people were on water, they tended to sink. I'm pretty sure that's how it worked.
That's consistent even to today.
Yeah, I think so.
So Jesus demonstrates this amazing power. It is interesting to me. I think that there's a couple of lessons. Not only Jesus' majesty and power over nature. Just a side note, artists through the centuries have tried to depict the great stories of the scriptures. And this is one of the famous stories of Jesus. Even people who don't know anything about Jesus know he's the guy who supposedly walked on water, right? So when you look at art, the truth is that there are great renditions and artists' interpretations of several of the moments of the Gospels that are just amazing to me. The Calming of the Sea by Rembrandt, by the way, which is an amazing painting that's stolen. They don't know where it is. It's been stolen since 1990. But all of the paintings of Jesus walking on water are horrible to me. It's so miraculous. You can't do it justice, right? They either make Jesus look like this ghost or some dude in a bathrobe, with some crazy glow all around him or something. It's so miraculous that it's impossible for me to imagine what it really looked like, because you've got the waves and it says that these skilled fishermen, many of them in the boat, cannot get the boat moving.
Right. The wind is against them and it's buffeted.
Them, and so you've got this, a squall.
By the way, that word buffeted is used a couple of times earlier.
Is it with Jimmy?
No. That's such a crap joke. That was such a terrible joke. Do you make a Jimmy Buffett joke? It's used.
I don't know. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. That's all I know.
That's funny. The word buffeted, the men who are demon possessed or tormented and buffeted. So that's used almost exclusive. So it has a demonic overtone.
Yeah.
Is Satan up to something?
Could be.
It's interesting. He
seeks to destroy them.
It's interesting. So anyway, continue.
Anyway, so one of the thing that first comes out of my mind is this is such an amazingly miraculous story that the greatest artists of our time, of all history, have trouble doing a good rendition of it to me. The second thing that I think is the big lesson for me is that they are right exactly in the center of the will of God when all hell breaks loose and the storm comes.
Because Jesus has told them.
He said, get in the boat and go across.
Oh,
I mean,
man.
they are clearly where Jesus said to be.
Or another way, John the Baptist did exactly what God wanted him to do.
He was clearly where he was supposed to be.
He did exactly and he gets killed.
And it did not go well. And I think that as one of the weaknesses of, let's talk about me, just so I'll let y'all off the hook. One of the weaknesses of my mind being raised in this culture is that I think God's will should make things easier. And if I'm in God's will, it will naturally lead to happiness and joy and fruit in ministry and relationships that go well and kids that get good grades and all of those kinds of things that we think should accompany it. And I just think we're duped. We're duped that way. Now, it's by God's grace, life is still full of joy and there's lots of great things. But
joy doesn't mean comfort, though.
Right.
And joy doesn't mean easy.
You could be exactly where you're supposed to be, and it's really going poorly. I've talked to maybe hundreds of people who work's not going well. My boss doesn't like me. I don't like my work. And the natural conclusion to all of those indicators is I'm in the wrong place. Maybe, or maybe not. And that's what this story brings out is that it's a difficult thing to follow the Lord of the universe.
There's another lesson. I wonder what you think of this because those are both really true and really right. There's also an aspect of Peter asking hey, listen, what they got sent out. So this is kind of their own solo project. I mean, remember, these are young men. They're teenagers. Only Peter.
Yeah. And by the way, all of the artist renditions render these dudes in the boat as real old dudes.
Like 40 years.
Yeah,
this is not a... Peter's the only one who goes with Jesus to pay the temple tax. And in order to pay the temple tax, you had to be 20. Nobody else goes with him, which means all the other disciples were not yet 20. So there's something there. They're teenagers. He sends them out. They accomplish amazing things with God's help, right?
Yes.
So they're learning what it means to walk with God and to be image bearers and bearers of the kingdom. So they realize that they can actually bring God's good work into the world with God's help. Obviously, with God's help, they're co-laboring. Then they co-labor with God for feeding the 4,000 or the 5,000, the 20,000 people.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about that is they give up what they had. This is all we have. They give up their food.
That's what we got.
They give up all their food. And at the end, they are more than fed, and so is everyone else.
Yeah.
So there's this act of, if I give up this, then they're on the water. He's walking, and Peter, who's like the lead disciple, it's clear that Peter's the lead disciple, says, listen, if I'm supposed to be the lead disciple, then I'm going to be like Jesus. I guess I'll be like him. I'm going to walk. Call me out if that's what you want me to do. And he does. And then he freaks out. And Jesus says, why did you lose faith? And I wonder if, I don't think Peter lost faith in Jesus. It's clear that Jesus is God. He might have lost faith, however, in what he and God could do together or in himself.
Now, I don't know. In some ways, Peter does what all 12 should have done, because the role of a disciple is to walk where their rabbi walks.
Right, to do what
the rabbi does.
But he's the lead guy, so he has to go first.
He goes and does it, which is quite amazing.
It is.
It's quite amazing that he gets his toes in the water. I think based on the text, the best I can tell is the waves freaked him out.
Okay. So
they caused him to doubt.
Is there a lesson then for us who are trying to follow Jesus? What is Peter teaching us? If Peter were here in this third chair, what would he say to us? Hey, man, here's what this taught me.
Well, I mean, John Ortberg's great book.
Yeah.
If you want to walk on water, you got to get out of the boat. So I guess it teaches us that there's a risk involved in following Jesus, that if you want to see some collective, really great thing, then you got to almost risk some greatness. You got to... In other words, lots of times we don't see God come through in a really large way because we've not been in a position where God needs to come through in a really large way. You know, if the most urgent thing you've prayed for the last few days is a parking spot that's close to the exit or something, then you know what? How much does God really need to do for you?
Yeah.
How much faith does it really take to live your life? Yeah. On the other hand, if you've put yourself in some risk because you feel like God's leading you to, remember they're in the boat, they're supposed to be there. God's led you to a place.
And should I come out? And Jesus says yes.
Come on, man.
Yes,
come on out here.
He does say yes. So he's asking the right questions.
Yeah. It's the great to see God do great things. You need to be in positions where God is needed to do great things. He's not going to just waste a great thing.
Yeah.
So.
But these two
stories. I don't know if that made sense.
Yeah, these two stories taken together are kind of. I think they're, for me, it's a reminder of like what disciples can do and what we're called to do. So the first thing is like they give their lunch, they give their food to Jesus. So is there anything I'm holding back?
Yeah.
You know, that I started thinking, is there something I'm holding back? Is there a lack of trust? Like if I give this to Jesus, I'm not going to have enough for me.
Yeah.
And I fall in that trap a lot, by the way.
Sure.
And then the second thing was God really does want a partner, and partner seems like a weird word because it makes me sound like I'm important. And when I mean partner, I mean like I think about the image I have is when our kids were really little and we would go on a vacation. We had these huge suitcases because we're flying to the Midwest in winter, so everything's super heavy. And I'd have this giant suitcase, and my daughter would be like, "Daddy, I help." And she's like 2, and she's like, I'm like, "Ready? 1, 2, 3," and we lift it into the car. And she was lifting maybe 4 ounces, or whatever, right? And she's strong now, but I was doing most of the lifting.
Sure.
But we're doing it together.
Yeah.
Now, what's beautiful about that is now she and my son are much older, and they have learned to, you know what I'm saying? Now that they're older, they can do a lot more. And I feel a little bit of hope with that in this story that, yeah, at first it was, Daddy, can I help? But now I'm doing more and more. And he's giving me more and more assignments. He gives us more and more assignments. And he's still with us, but we're growing in strength and maturity and the ability to help. It's really
He can
cool.
always get things done without people at all, but it seems to be that 99.8% of the time he's going to get it done through somebody.
Which is nuts.
It's nuts. It's a bad plan.
It's inefficient for sure. Well, the problem with
it's the way he goes.
It's so inefficient. And I think as Bay Area people, we get really impatient.
Well, it's inefficient unless you're trying to produce something in the people that get to partner.
Right.
Right? And then suddenly it's not.
Yeah.
Because if God did everything for us, then he can't produce anything really in us.
That's good.
And,
that's a good word.
So this is, it's not just meeting needs. Of course it's meeting needs, but it's also growing us.
Yeah.
And growing our character.
The kingdom is expanding in all sorts of different ways. All right.
It's a beautiful chapter.
It is really, really powerful and heart. And I do think we see something about the heart of Jesus in this, but also about his invitation to his disciples.
Amen.
Very cool.
Maybe
all right.
so.
Yes, may it be so. All right. Well, thanks, Steve, for stopping by. And boy, this was fun. We just got to talk about the Bible back to back weeks. It was really
I know,
cool.
Yeah, it's been a fun summer.
And okay, so next week we're going to be in. We're going to continue on
Chapter 15.
Yeah, and we're going to keep trucking. So we are going to take a 2-week break for the Afterword, just for the 4th of July. I'm actually out of town, so we're going to be on break for 2 weeks, and we'll be back in just a few weeks after that. So
awesome.
2-week break, and then we'll be back after that. All right. So we'll see you guys in a couple of bits.
Peace.
See you guys.
See
Bye.
You.